Like a perpetually optimistic adolescent, harbored a lifelong ambition of achieving renown as an adventurer. Driven by the desire to provide his family with a lavish existence, he departed his humble village for the metropolis, intending to enroll as an adventurer. However, his journey in this world proved challenging. Among the 9 races fashioned by the goddess, humanity occupied the lowest rung. Consequently, he frequently endured racial prejudice, a reality Light soon encountered firsthand. Immediately upon entering the city, a baseman adventurer brusquely ordered him to clear the battle. Lager, despite not obstructing the way, called only over an apology before finally arriving at the goal. There, he formally enrolled as an adventurer, and the receptionist informed him that all new recruits, including himself, were initially assigned an F rank. She inquired if he possessed any special ability that might influence his evaluation, to which Light enthusiastically confirmed. He revealed his unique skill, unlimited gacha, which allowed him to conjure items. Adin said a mere explanation would not suffice. Light opted for a demonstration, materializing and instantly activating his gacha device. The gacha produced a fork card, and as Light released it, a fork instantly apparent on the table. Yet, the fork was severely bent, causing Light to panic and assure the receptionist that his skill typically yielded superior results. He promptly employed his ability at humor themes, but the outcome remained consistent. He summoned a spoiled apple and a piece of stale, moldy bread. This performance solidified the receptionist's belief that such an incompetent individual merited nothing higher than unfriend, which Light accepted without complaint. He then inquired about immediate job opportunities, and the receptionist directed him to the bulletin board. This board displayed all the simpler tasks, but Light as visible discomfort upon saying it made the receptionist realize he was illiterate. Beyond his perceived ineptitude, his illiteracy was surprising, given humanity is generally low literacy rate. She suggested he undertake rudimentary tasks. Tasks included hauling rocks and collecting firewood, though these jobs offered significantly lower pay, which Light nonetheless accepted. Following a day of arduous labor, he earned just enough to secure a room, still depending on his gacha ability for sustenance. Despite his optimism, a group of basemen had other intention, deliberately obstructing his path. They positioned themselves to ensure he collided with them, and their leader instantly began bracing Light for the collision, and supposedly soiling his attire. Before Light could react, his purse was snatched. He frantically pleaded for its return, explaining the behemoth's weight of the money. The wolfman, however, merely punched him acid, demanding payment for his laundry, as the baseman abandoned Light and a moody puddle. Passers-by callously advised him to seek shelter in the squalid slums, alongside other humans. Overwhelmed by despair, Light was suddenly offered a helping hand by an unexpected stranger. He instinctively grasped the elegant hand of the elf before him, only to realize a moment later that his own hand was caked in mud. Light recoiled, profusely apologizing to the elf for soiling her hand, but she reassured him it was inconsequential. She promised him no harm. Yet years of ingrained racism and prejudice prevented him from fully trusting her words. To demonstrate her sincerity, the elven woman unexpectedly knelt and embraced him, leaving Light utterly dumbfounded. Even as onlookers derided the elf for demanding herself be showing kindness to a human. She then assisted Light in standing up. Behind her stood a diverse group, composed of individuals from various races. They introduced themselves as the Concord of Tribes Party, clarifying their group as purpose. Their party comprised one representative from each species the goddess had created, and they were currently lacking a human member. Garu, the Besma, introduced himself first. Next was the Alfwarmer. Sasha Walton listed the remaining members: Drago, the Dragonaut; Diablo, the Demon; Oboro, the Owner; Siam, the Dark Elf; Nanun, the Dwarf; and Santor, the Centauri. Garu explained he had been searching for a human to finalize their party roster. Shun further elaborated that their collective goal was to eradicate racism and establish a world of universal equality. Light found their ideals almost too good to be true, yet he currently declined such an appealing offer and enthusiastically joined the Concord of Tribes. Their adventurous one began, with Light often proving to be the most vulnerable member, frequently requiring rescue from monsters by Drago and Sasha. They challenged him to exercise greater care, as a single blow from a monster could be fatal. Like, into apologies for his lack of caution. Sasha, however, began checking him for injury, simultaneously instructing him to remain behind the archer. The rest of the group started playfully teasing Sasha, implying she was overly fond of Lei, and that by concern for him, causing her to blush as she clarified that her concern was purely professional, viewing him solely as a fellow party member. Legan, feeling inadequate, lamented his inability to contribute beyond carrying their gear. Drago, however, reassured him that his delicious taste was a valuable contribution, a sentiment that greatly uplifted Lai. Her tenant, he cheerfully continued with the team deeper into the dungeon until they reached an expansive open area. This page had only a single entrance and exit. The party members exchanged glances, concluding it was the ideal location for their shame. Unaware of their intentions, Light began preparing tent for the group. Suddenly, Drago approached him and declared that he was being expelled from the party, a statement Light struggled to comprehend. He questioned it, what transgression led to his dismissal, and Garu, the best man, informed him he was being let go due to his perceived uselessness. Everyone then proceeded to Bradley. I delayed importance and confession. Even Sasha displayed disgust towards him. The remaining party members began hurling insults at Light and, by extension, the entire human race. Light initially suspects a joke, but his captors informed him that no one would was them pranking someone as insignificant as him. He then questions their previous kin demeanor, asking why they had treated him so well up to that point. They admit it was all an accurate. Drago explains that their superiors had observed his unlimited gacha giveaway and believed he might be a maestro. Consequently, the Concord of Tribes was instructed to monitor him closely. However, upon realizing Light's gift was useless and he was not a maestro, they received orders to eliminate him. Sasha expresses the greatest relief that Light will no longer be with them. Kasia would have been forced to marry him if he had been a true maestro. The mere idea of such a union repulses her. Light, Manuel, remains ignorant of the true maestro. Drago then declares the rival in Uji and must dispatch him before other adventurers arrive. Garu, mimicking Wolverine, instantly extends his metallic claws and slashes Light as face. It's only at this moment that Light grasps the severity of his predicament, understanding there is no escape. In a desperate attempt, he flies at top speed, while his bigoted pursuers mockingly declare he won't escape. Sasha's arrow pierces his leg, sending Light to the ground, screaming. The prejudiced Elfie remarked that human screams are music to their ears. Garu decides to prolong Light as a good and starts attacking him further. Drago intervenes, instructing him to stop, as he must stay the same to appear as if the human succumbed to a monster ambush. Garu complies, preparing to deliver the final blow, but Light desperately crawls onward, fighting for his life. Abruptly, the ground beneath him illuminates, and Light comprehends he is standing within a teleportation circle. Drago also spots it, and commands Garu to dispatch him swiftly, but before Garu can reach Light, the teleportation circle activates, whisking him away. Yet, Light's circumstances don't significantly improve. To Garu's quote from the treacherous merchant, the teleportation trap deposits him in an unknown part of the dungeon. He understands that encountering a monster means certain death. He starts recalling his family, pondering, what did he do to deserve this betrayal? He reflects on the pleasant treatment he received before their treachery. He now realizes their benevolent conduct was morally avocado, designed to earn his complete trust. Ultimately, they revealed their true, cruel nature. Enraged, he channels his fury into a will to survive. He resists, vowing to exact vengeance upon past scandal, and dismantle them with his very hands. Before he can utter further curses, light hairs allow grow from behind. Pas he turn. SSA level 1,000 monster Garin, he panics, recognizing it as a creature from a nightmare. Light comprehend he has been transported to the dungeon as the past level, and he feels a better chance of surviving his party as treasury than confronting this beast. He wonders how he could possibly fight it. His mind drifts to his ultimate gacha gear, and he resolves to take a gamble, frantically pressing the gacha button. Suddenly, his seemingly ordinary gift undergoes a transformation, becoming something far grander than he could have ever imagined. A massive magic circle materializes beneath him, and the gacha device begins powering up. Like is utterly bewildered. Just as the monster lunges, the gacha roll finishes, summoning a level 9,999 Mike Servant. She obliterates the monster instantly. The entire ordeal concludes before Light can even blink. There, the aura gathering might approaches him, nails, and swiftly heals his injuries, explaining she could be able to see his silky, smooth skin harmed. Thus she healed him without seeking permission. Light is astonished to find himself perfectly recovered. The Might then inquires about his name. He introduces himself as Light, and she expresses immense joy upon hearing it. She first made a shroud of honor to serve him until death. Later, finding this somewhat overwhelming, suggestive, she should at least introduce herself first. The girl faster and acting. She informs Light that she originated from a super ultra rare card within his unlimited gacha. Light, however, struggles to accept that a level 999 might could emerge from his supposedly useless gift. Matron requests permission to share a appraisal skin on his gift. To discern its true nature, he promptly grants her consent, and Mai activates her sharingan. She discovers his abilities are concealed by a powerful enchantment, invisible to anyone below her own level. She informs Light that his ultimate gacha is far more potent than he realizes, explaining that the charts it summons are heavily influenced by the mana density of his current location. Furthermore, she reveals a rarity class existed beyond even her super ultra rarity. May clarifies that while the surface has very low mana density, the dungeon depths are saturated with mana, which enabled her summoning surprises like as courage for venturing alone into the dungeon depths to unlock his gift's full potential. He, however, confesses as a failure when they even approach the dungeon by himself. He starts weeping, recounting how his party abandoned him in the dungeon. He laments three false promises of building a discrimination-free world, which were morally employed to deceive him. He then falls raving against them. Mai suddenly embraces him, stating she cannot fully comprehend his ordeal, but she is prepared to fulfill his every desire, and eliminating the individuals responsible for his pain will pose no significant challenge for her. Lager, however, intervenes, explaining that she cannot proceed, not due to his benevolence, but because he insists on carrying out his vengeance himself. This is presently unfeasible due to his current frailty. He pledges to make them endure immense suffering before their demise, and my own small boost before him. She assures him that if his goal is to gain sufficient strength for retribution, she will assist him in achieving it. Expressing her conviction in his inherent capability, she receives Light's gratitude. However, he remains unsatisfied with merely a single formidable family in his retinue. He resolves to leverage the dungeon as mana abundant surroundings. Furthermore, he reactivates his unlimited gacha system, summoning additional elite Maida with the intention of establishing a realm This realm will serve as the cornerstone for his elaborate vendetta. 3 years have elapsed since that pivotal day, and light now presides over a multitude of maze. He resides within a grand palace he constructed for himself. May consistently remains at his side, fulfilling the pledge she made upon their initial encounter. Every maid appears utterly captivated by him, enthusiastically cheering, delighted by his acknowledgement, while May instructs them to conduct themselves appropriately. He departs from the fortress and proceeds towards the nearby marketplace, where he is universally known. A vendor beckons him for breakfast at his stall. Concurrently, other merchants inform him of a scarcity of snack provisions. Items within the realm. Light assures them he will address the issue promptly, while May advises him against concerning himself with such minor responsibilities. That as he guarantees the logistical challenge will be resolved with utmost speed. Light then comprehended the necessity of establishing an entirely new system for managing logistics, given that the populace of this location has multiplied manifold over the preceding 3 years. He then inquires of May regarding the whereabouts of his remaining legendary summons. May responds that Yuki, the best man, is currently occupied with meticulously charting the terrain surrounding the dungeons and surveying the wardens for potential dangers. Light contemplates the numerous creatures inhabiting the forest. Yet understand the world present no challenge to a prodigiously skilled bestamer such as Yuki. May proceeds by stating that Ellie, the sorceress, is assiduously endeavoring to formulate the unique magical spells required for his ambitious scheme. Light ponders that Ellie possesses the capability to manage this task, given the intricate nature of the magical incantation he commissioned her to devise. Light then inquires about Nas, the vampire agent, who excels in close quarters combat but exhibits a degree of intellectual simplicity in other domains. May explains that she ascended as the duty of patrolling the castle premises, reasoning that this would prevent her from nagging her less than active men, and consequently avoiding a potential mischief. Light, however, finds her presence agreeable, and she tends to make matters more nagging within the castle environment. Shortly thereafter, they return to the fortress, where Light is summoned by Jack, the final member of his quartet of legendary summons, who questions Light as readiness for a training session. May appears slightly irritated. She instructs Jack that he ought to refer to Light using the appropriate honorific Master, but Jack, embodying the persona of a true signal, disregard what he perceives as feminist nonsense, completely dismissing her. Light reassures May that her concern is unwarranted, as she regards Jack as an elder sibling, and he informs May of his intention to proceed with his training session. Alongside Jack came now within the confines of the training arena, both prepare for a sparring match, when, with an explosive surge of velocity, Light charges at his summoned companion, delivering a direct twincher to his chiseled abdomen, driving him backward with unexpected force. Jack appears gratified by Light's display of power, asserting that a typical adventurer would have perished from such a blow. But he is capable of enduring it, being constructed like a fortress and able to withstand an extraordinary volume of harm. They reconvene at the center of the arena, their fists clashing before they disengage. Light then unleashes a rapid succession of blows, which Jack skillfully evades. Concurrently, Nas continues her patrol of the hallways, her somewhat vacant expression bobbing, when she is approached by several other mages. That will begin to flatter her, asserting that they have experienced a sense of security due to Nas' constant presence. As she patrols and ensures no peril lurks nearby, Nas becomes ecstatic, precisely the reaction the mind had hoped for. A romping them to the mass apron, wherein they propose she should proceed to verify that Light as sleeping quarters are properly secured and that no irregularities are occurring with it. Nas perceives this as an excellent suggestion, and makes her way to the bedroom, but as she attempts to open the door, Mai steps out from inside. Nas questions Mai about her activities within like as private chambers. Nothing that he should but ngagit in training at peaceful. Mai instantly begins to blush. Asserting that she was merely attempting to tidy the room during his absence, Nas informed her that she is obligated to inspect the room for any potential hazards. However, before Mai could reprimand her, Nas enters the chamber and observes the disheveled state of the bed. With a vacant expression, she remarked that it appears as though someone had been on the bed, sniffing the pillow and tossing about, and inquired if Mai deliberately arranged it in such a manner. Mai resolves to leverage her perceived intellectual simplicity to her benefit, and confidently declared that it is her unique method of bed preparation. Nas is visibly impressed by this explanation. Nan asks if she might also learn this technique, but Mai declines, stating it is a proprietary trade secret, which she cannot disclose at this time. At that moment, Nas realized that the author might have entrusted her with a message for Mai. Consequently, she produces a parchment and hands it to Mai, with an comprehension that the author might are staging a rebellion against her for exclusively occupying like a sleeping quarters and preventing them from planning it for Onche. Mai reassures Nas not to be concerned, as she opts to manage the maid's herself and even offers Nas some loosey change to ensure her silence, which Nas readily accepted before departing. She immediately heads to the market, surveying the various food items she could purchase with her money, ultimately deciding on sofa, fluffy pancakes accompanied by fresh meal. With her threads in hand, she cheerfully makes her way back to the castle, where she spots Yuki seated on a balcony. She asks Yuki if her work in the forest is complete, tired of Nas's incessant chatter. Yuki then reveals to her that she has already finished the map Mai requested and has returned to deliver it. Nas congratulates her and resumes her patrol duties. Yuki then enters the throne room, and once inside the ostentatious space, she begins to shake loudly, knowing there is no one around to stop her. Afterward, she leaps onto the throne itself and starts to tamper with it, accidentally breaking one of the wing of an angel statue. Fearing Mai's reaction, she hastily retouches the page in a haphazard manner and flees the throne room, running for her life. Back in the training grounds, Lei and Jack continue their sparring. Jack suggests they conclude their session for the day and visit the bath. They soon move towards the bathing area, and once inside the enormous bathtub, Jack commends Lei for his remarkably fast skill acquisition, asserting that like this so powerful that most creatures in the dungeons will be trivial opponents for him, meaning only a select few on the surface could truly challenge him. However, he cautions like that there are still those who will seek to utterly destroy him at their first opportunity. Lake's expression turns serious as he recalls the betrayal he suffered 3 years prior, declaring that he will not rest until he achieves his revenge. Meanwhile, in Mai's chambers, she summons the 4 troublesome maids and demands to know what their problem is, reading their letter back to them. Once confronted by Mai herself, the 4 maids fall into stunned silence, unsure how to respond. She offered their apologies to her, claiming it was merely their way of showing support. As they know Mai is overworked, Mai instructs them not to concern themselves with her duties, but to focus on their own. She rejects their offer to clean Lake's chamber and instead punishes them by ordering them to clean the entire hallway leading to the throne room behind. The maids are astonished by this command, protesting that the hallway is excessively long, but Mai tells them to persist, as it will keep them occupied. While she is away on a mission with Lycan, but lacks the necessary funds. While there, she unexpectedly bumps into Ale, who asks what Nas is staring at. Nas points to the gauntlet before questioning Ali about her premature return, as she was supposed to be supervising the new construction project. Ali replies that the construction is progressing smoothly, so she decided to snare in a brief respite. They soon begin to quarrel about who is closer to Lake and who holds more importance. Kelly informs Nas that she is involved directly in the elaborate revenge plan like as formulating, unlike Nas. Ellie also boasts that she recently enjoyed a delightful evening, sharing a cup of tea with Lake, during which they discussed their progress and claims that their next meeting will involve a private dinner she plans to arrange. Thus retorts that she told Zeus to share and with her before informing Ellie of her proficiency in close quarters combat. Offering her assistance should she ever need it, Ellie smiled and assures her that she will certainly take her upon that over someday. With that, Nas returns to her mundane duties back in the castle. The four men are engrossed in plotting against May, asserting that May is no better than the angry little mustache man from Germany. Contemplating whether they should secretly report her to Lai, but they ultimately decide against it, as none of them wish to suffer her wrath. All might realizes that like cares for Mai so deeply because she was his very first someone. While the purple-haired one at the start, it took like another 2 months to finally summon UK. Which means May and Light were entirely alone to get in the dungeons for 2 whole months. They become incredibly jealous and start waiting on the fool and acting strongly out of envy before resolving to perform some voodoo magic. They gather around a table and Chandy in an attempt to eliminate May from the equation. Unfortunately for them, May ends up overhearing their entire scheme and enters their room, turning him once again. The Mites immediately begin to apologize, claiming they were merely a bit jealous, and did they genuinely mean anything they said. May tells them to chase their strange fantasies, explaining that during the months between her own summoning and Yuki's, Light was diligently occupied with mastering every aspect of magical and practicing every martial art called a temper, leaving no time for anything else. This explanation somewhat reassures the minds. May sense that she had returned because she felt she might have been too harsh on them. But now she realizes that she evidently was not, and therefore instructs them to clean the throne room as well, given their apparent abundance of free time for practicing voodoo magic. Entirely at May's discretion, the Mites had no alternative but to comply with her commands. As they cleaned the entirety of the throne room, they resolved to remain silent, this time to prevent any further complications. However, while dusting the throne, the green-haired Mite inadvertently dislodges the fragment of the angel wing that Nas had previously broken. The piece clatters to the floor, and the Mites are horrified, believing they are responsible. As Light pondered Mike's potential actions, the following morning, upon entering the dungeon, he discovered Nas, Ellie, and Yuki awaiting his arrival. He offered a morning greeting, but Nas and Ellie promptly resumed their squabbling. Unexpectedly, a creature materialized from the ground, causing Light to instantly freeze as he identified it as a hellhound. Talk aware of his increased strength, the lingering trauma from that past encounter still gripped him, his courage draining whenever he faced the creature. His companions, conversely, showed no apprehension, instead becoming incensed that the hellhound had distressed slightly. Nas prepared to dismember it, while Ellie sought authorization to utterly wipe out the hellhound's species from existence, and Yuki mused about watching hell itself. To chase this creature into its deepest chasms, their combined aura alone sent the monster recoiling, whimpering, as it grasped the extent of its disadvantage. Leg, however, pacified his rugged companions, steadily regaining his own composure before deliberately approaching the beast. Gently patting it, he understood that even a light-hearted command would prompt his legendary summons to genuinely obliterate the entire lineage from the world. He then addressed his group, starting to hear it to ask them to the surface. As their retribution plan was set to commence that very day, meanwhile, above ground, the beast folk paid homage to the furry individual who had been part of the group that betrayed Light and abandoned him to his fate. He appeared to have ascended to the status of a local luminary, with two people practically imploring him to court their siblings. He strode alongside his associates with an air of absolute authority. When he observed a human child rummaging through crevices, seeking sustenance, however, the Fury harbored intense racial prejudice, and without provocation, he chose to toss the child aside, ordering him to flee and never reappear in the vicinity. If he followed his extension, the other best folk foolishly applauded his action, but their cheers faded as he stepped into the tavern. He claimed the prime setting and instructed his associates to order lavishly, boasting of his substantial earnings, which he felt compelled to spend before any tax authorities intervened. As humans suffered from hunger outside, these furies were served skewers of meat-filled Highgate and mashed potatoes. The universally lauded him for transforming into an icon for all baseball, notwithstanding his own humble beginnings in the slums, and his ascent from poverty to become a leader whom all wished to emulate. He declared to them audaciously that achieving his status was no simple feat, attributing it to his mastery of persuasion and the inherent tendency of baseball to be followers. He asserted that by properly leveraging this trait, he could live like royalty, claiming the paramount aspect was discerning, which tasks yielded significant profit versus those demanding extensive effort for meager returns. In terms of wealth and influence, one of the last intelligent Fury inquired if the achievement he undertook 3 years prior, alongside the concord of 12 party had been lucrative. Another Fury reprimanded the questioner, and the Wolf Bias then informed them that, regrettably, the federation that employed them had bound them by an oath of secrecy. Consequently, they were unable to disclose any details regarding either hero child it as the most comfortable and high-satisfying assignment they had ever undertaken, as it merely involved eliminating one insignificant human child, and now he enjoyed wealth and renown. It did, however, trouble him that he never ascertained the portal as destination, but he dismissed any possibility, however remote, of like a survival. They pondered the true nature of this maestro, whom the Federation was so determined to locate. Yen, a shiver trudging down his spine suggested, had delving further into the matter, made it prove perilous. His musings were interrupted by a striking young woman, who revealed herself to be Mai. She interjected, requesting a conversation, and then inquired if he was Garul, the chieftain of the baseball. He took a slow sip from his drink before giving a nod. Mai then fabricated a story, claiming to have been master-like as personal attendant. Who hailed from a distinguished noble lineage. Garo was taken aback to learn that Lai had been of noble birth, and he mused whether it may have been more advantageous for him had he allowed him to live. Mai persisted in her deception, stating she had been seeking Lai for the preceding 3 years, and that all intelligence had guided her to this nation, where he was last observed with a different group. Garo confirmed his involvement with that party and liked his presence among them, causing my eyes to visibly moisten, as she falsely claimed to have heard that Light had perished in the dungeon, and was never seen thereafter. Garo nodded in agreement, asserting that it was indeed true that Light had met an untimely end, but my son questioned him if he would escort him to that specific city, as it would offer her a measure of comfort to visit the last known location of Light's life. Garo brusquely demanded to know his incentive, and to his astonishment, Mai produced a pouch containing 3 solid gold ingots. His surrounding crony were stunned into silence, but Garo maintained his composure, pondering if this was some elaborate ruse, or if the hero genuinely sought an escort into the dungeons. Nevertheless, helped it to proceed, convinced that a single human female could not even lay a hand on him, much less present a danger. Garo ultimately led her into the dungeons, accompanied by all his associates as an escort, and following several hours of trekking, he inquired if Mai was alright. May appeared fatigued but offered Asmila, asserting her ability to continue. Garo Music Abun who such lucrative opportunities consistently presented themselves to him, fully intending to relieve her of all her gold. Their intention was to defile her atop Lake's burial site. Subsequently, they proceeded into the grotto where Lake had been left for dead. Garo deceptively informed Might that this was the location of Lake's unfortunate incident, fabricating a story about a monster ambush. He fabricated that Lake had no opportunity to flee to safety, was brutally dismembered, and subsequently ensnared in a teleportation device. Following this, Lake was never seen again. May collapsed, weeping, as Garo inwardly mused on the perceived inferiority of humans. He pondered how they could even detect impending peril. Meanwhile, his subordinates began positioning themselves as obstructing the sole escape route. He closely persisted in his deceit, claiming he had attempted to rescue Light but failed. Just as Garo prepared to strike, May Aston shifted dramatically as she declared that only the most despicable beings on the planet would deserve a poor-hearted individual like Light, lure him into a squalid union, and then betray him. She then surveyed her surroundings. She realized that had she joined like a service owner, her would have never endured such hardship. Her would have been kicked, shot in the leg with an arrow, and brutally beaten to the brink of death. Garo instantly perceived the danger and recoiled. He pondered how this woman possessed such intimate knowledge, while his henchmen appeared bewildered. They were unaware of the full scope of the situation, but Garo, however, was fully informed. He knew that only his 12 party members and a select few of the nation's elite could possibly be privy to these events. He demanded to know her allegiance, questioning if she was an infiltrator dispatched by a rival faction. She scoffed in response, asserting her sole loyalty to Lei, and warning him that he would not face her fury. The sheer power emanating from her was sufficient to instill fear in him, a sensation that even surprised Garo himself. He mentally reiterated that she was merely an inferior human, useful only for exploitation and subsequent disposal. Yet, her mere gaze sent shivers down his spine, prompting him to realize the gravity of the situation was no jest. His instincts screamed that nagging hand would lead to his demise. However, before May could deliver the finishing blow, Lake's voice resonated from the shadowy corner. He instructed May to kill herself, stating he would personally handle Garo. Garo, however, refused to accept the voice he was hearing. But Light finally emerged, addressing Garo as if they were old acquaintances, declaring his presence was to settle a debt. He was there to repay him for the events of 3 years prior. Garo immediately regained his composure, erupting into laughter. He asserted he never anticipated seeing Light again. Then taunted him stating a mere level 15 human was powerless against a level 150. Great boss such as himself he chuckled, remarking that he had no idea how Light had managed to survive. However, he now had the opportunity to personally enlighten as live and present his body as evidence. Light sighed, inquiring if Garo was even curious about May's identity. He also asked if Garo was curious about her capability. Garo considered he was unaware of his little May's power, but was absolutely certain that feeble humans could never measure up to these folk like themselves. He boasted that all his henchmen were above level 130 and would effortlessly overwhelm them. With that, he issued the command to attack, and two of his subordinates instantly charged towards Light. They were poised to end his life, but in the blink of an eye, May materialized before them, and their heads simultaneously dropped to the ground. As their lifeless bodies collapsed, she issued a stern warning that anyone attempting to harm Light would forfeit their head. However, Light instructed her to stand down. He told her to simply secure all escape routes, as he wished to participate in the action himself. Garo's subordinates appeared to be losing their resolve. They were in disbelief at what they had witnessed, but Garo attempted to rally them, asserting it was merely a deceptive maneuver she employed. We claimed it was nothing more. Like Chen questioned if Garo genuinely still believed humans were inferior to them, and if they had ever that fakta. Though the human race made but the most formidable of all, Garo scoffed, displaying his level, but Light countered that a level was merely a numerical value. He added that it bore no relation to an individual astro power. Garo, having heard Nauge, charged forward alongside all his henchmen, drilling in for an assault, but to Garo's astonishment, Light remained motionless, like still water, before suddenly erupting into a fierce counter-offensive. He blocked and struck every single opponent, sending them sprawling and breathless. Light then calmly approached Garo. He inquired if Garo still considered humans double waker. Garo, unable to tolerate such humiliation, pushed past his pain and leapt up once more. He declared that no human could possibly contend with him. With that, he tore a magic crystal from his pocket and shattered it on the ground. This action summoned his familia, which manifested as a formidable level 500 wolf monster. Light then questioned if that was the extent of Garo's capabilities. Garo, however, misinterpreted Light's composure as shock and fear, instructing him to begin pleading for his life. But Light merely stood his ground, challenging Garo to attack and vowing not to budge an inch from his spot. Enraged, Garo commanded his summoned beast to unleash a devastating blast upon Light. The attack was so potent it could obliterate an entire city. Yet as the dust settled, Garo's jaw dropped. He saw Light standing perfectly still. Just as he had promised, Light stood without a single mark on his body. He then mocked Garo for bestowing such an extravagant name upon an ineffective attack. He pointed out that all it accomplished was stirring up dust pointlessly. Garo was rendered speechless, while his henchmen began to soil themselves in terror. Light then declared it was his turn to attack, dramatically drawing a card at F in a game of Yu-Gi-Oh! He unleashed the level 9,000 ultra rare card of the Primal Wolf God, which materialized behind him, shimmering and translucent, leaving the best folk utterly dumbfounded. Following this, Light commanded the Wolf God to eliminate Garo's familia. However, instead of unleashing a powerful blast, the Wolf God merely exhaled a gentle breath. The immense power contained within that breath instantly crystallized Garo's wall, shattering it into fragments directly before him. Garo, standing by, utterly powerless, finally snaps, finding it impossible to accept that his formidable level 500 wolf creature was obliterated in mere moments. Legend, however, asserts that he could have effortlessly handled the beast on his own. Had he chosen to substantiate this, he unveils his actual power level, which is a staggering maximum of 99,999. Garo, trembling and stuttering, insists this is impossible, given that human capabilities typically cap at level 100. He further argues that if Light were truly the same individual from their past, he would have physically matured by now. Light explains that he employs an algorithm to halt his physical development, desiring to preserve his current appearance, and the memory of the day he was betrayed by the most despicable person imaginable. Garo then grasps the gravity of his situation, realizing he is doomed. He understands he stands no chance against the formidable entity Light has transformed into, acknowledging his inevitable demise. Acting like a true coward, he discards his weapons, profusely apologizing for his past actions. He pleads that the Federation coerced him into it, maintaining that even on this very day, he harbored no ill will and intended to reveal the truth. But his subordinates defended him independently, and implicated him. His own henchmen are astonished, unable to reconcile this with Manuel was falling in his power and make. Just that morning he bows his head low, imploring forgiveness, even offering to become Light's personal servant if desired. Legend, unimpressed, dismisses his plague and instead inquires about the identity of the maestro, and why the government is so determined to locate this individual. Garo truthfully admits he has no knowledge of the maestro's identity, stating the government merely informed them that the maestro was likely human. Yet, their chance versus to eliminate infiltration to the basement. Garo immediately prostrates himself, asserting he genuinely has no idea, and they were simply following orders. Lieutenant shifts his gaze to Garo's associates, asking if they possess any information that could spark their lives. The subordinates all begin to declare they have the intelligence light sex. However, my employees have unique vision to detect their deception, and ruthlessly dispatches them, spilling blood as you proclaim that onion wall there is to light. Will Priest bear hand, then redirects his attention to Garo, asking if he stands a chance of victory. Should he ask to the survive and initiate a conflicting? Garo candidly responds, "Hot light is exceptionally powerful, capable of conquering entire nations single-handedly. However, he warns that if nations unite and deploy all their accumulated weaponry, light might face significant challenges, as he is merely unmanned, albeit with a might. Light smiles, stating he wishes to reveal something to Garo, and then employs teleportation to transport him directly to his personal throne room. Garo is utterly stunned, to the point of near mental collapse, upon witnessing the vast army like that has assembled, where even the most minor soldier is level 15, including Formaida, X at level 99,999, and innumerable other units ranging from level 6,000 to 9,000. Speechless, Atea rolls down Garo escape as he comprehends that life possesses the power to annihilate the entire planet in an instant, effectively rendering him a deity. He ponders the consequences on where inevitably breaks away. Several months later, Light finally emerges from the depths of the dungeons, accompanied by his companions. He journeys to his former village, hoping to demonstrate to his family that he has indeed become a capable individual, strong enough to protect them indefinitely. However, upon reaching his village, his eyes, once brimming with happiness and nostalgia for home, are now filled with profound shock and terror as he beholds the utter devastation that has befallen his entire community. He rushes into the village, disbelieving what he says, and collapses to the ground, utterly despairing. May and the others comfort him, vowing to avenge whoever inflicted such destruction upon his home. His sole glimmer of hope stemmed from the fact that during their search, his family as remains were not found among the other deceased villagers. Thus, he clung to the possibility that his family had evaded the massacre and might still be concealed somewhere within the nation. Several weeks after the tragic event, Light resolves to return to the ravaged village. He aims to calmly evaluate the situation, as his previous emotional statements have caused him to overlook crucial details that could offer insight into his family's fate. This time, he is joined by Gold, an armored knight, and Nete, a gray-haired assassin. The village's appearance again fills him with sorrow, but he maintains his composure and, with the assistance of his companions, constructs several graves for the fallen villager. He places flowers upon them, recognizing that this devastation is undoubtedly the work of an adventuring party from a different race. As Light remains lost in contemplation, Gold begins to grumble about the need to depart quickly, lest he be forced to spend the night outdoors. Ned becomes irritated, asserting that Light is grieving and deserves ample time. Gold explains to Neto that he will traverse the highest easy place and the disastrous person will ourselves understand the necessity of finding a secure and comfortable resting place for Light. In his current state of grief, Ned cannot dispute this. This brief exchange appears to leave Light as spirits, he smiles, recess, and tells him to relax, assuring them he is feeling alright. Light stated that securing logging was imminent, but emphasized the immediate need for further intelligence. He acknowledged their overwhelming power, Weekly believed it was sufficient to confront the entire world. However, Light insisted on proceeding with prudence. Hacho challenged against rushing into a full-scale conflict. God concurred, stressing the importance of understanding one's adversary as intimately as oneself to ensure a decisive and clean victory. Light affirmed this perspective, stating, their initial task was to thoroughly evaluate the capabilities of all various nations. Furthermore, they considered that the assault on his village could be connected to his potential status as a maestro. The realization that the clandestine organization responsible for his past death sentence had gone to such extremes as to massacre his entire village fueled his fury. He swore to raise the world to ashes, intending to purge all wickedness from it. Nam was startled by the intense aura radiating from Light, but God intervened, shooting him and reminding him to control his rage. While they were within the city limits, as they wished to avoid a premature bloodbath, this admonition jolted Light back to his senses. He composed himself, then produced a rather unappealing, short-edged small mask as they prepared for their entry into the city. They began their aerial journey towards the city of Dages. When route Nim inquired about their strategy on the arrived. Lake informed them that initially, they must maintain a discreet presence to prevent the Concord of 12 from becoming suspicious. Furthermore, they were required to register with the Adventurers Guild. After registration, their goal was to elevate their party as rank as high as possible, understanding that a superior party rank would grant them access to more valuable intelligence from individuals seeking their assistance or those hoping to secure their patronage and salvaguardon. Gold responded, affirming the plan as excellent. However, I questioned whether they should project on foot from that point, fearing that continued faith would make them instantly conspicuous. Life concurred, and he opted to descend to the ground, continuing their journey on foot as they traversed the forest. However, they overheard a series of shots and discovered a group of dwarfs had completely encircled Ahmad and his daughter. Apparently intending to rob them, the dwarfs spotted Gold as gleaming armor and commanded them to reveal themselves. Light then finally instructed his companions to handle just a little maggots. Nam effortlessly dispatched the dwarfs, who were live-stoned, and burned them together in the forest. As a token of gratitude, the man offered him transportation to the city of Dagas. The young girl appeared genuinely astonished, having never encountered a human capable of defeating a dwarf in battle. The man confirmed that such powerful humans were indeed a rarity. He then inquired if Lake's group was a renowned adventuring party. Lake, however, candidly admitted they weren't even registered yet, a revelation that genuinely surprised the man. Nevertheless, he assured Lake that Dagas was the ideal location to establish a new party, given that the city itself was situated on the frontier of the Dwarven Kingdom, bordering both human and elven territory. This unique positioning fostered a vast area of dungeons and attracted numerous adventurers to the region, leading to frequent conflicts, yet also significant trade. It was particularly favored by humans, but recognizing that humans often face prejudice. In many other locales, he personally operated and anywhere individuals of every race were treated with equal deference. Lai and his companions disembarked from the car at the town's entrance, expressing their gratitude to the man who introduced himself as colonel and extended an invitation to his establishment. Should they choose to spend the night? Upon entering the city, they were immediately struck by its vibrant activity and dazzling allure. Every corner boasted shops offering weaponry and protective gear, while the glow from forges illuminated the streets, revealing dwarfs diligently crafting swords and shields with ear. Having absorbed the city's magnificence, they proceeded to the Adventurers Guild, stepping into a spacious hall teeming with individuals. Congregated around quest borders, Light observed a significant number of human adventurers present as well. However, racial prejudice appeared to persist even here, as humans defer to adventurers of other races. For the moment, Light chose to overlook this and proceed directly to the registration desk, where they were assigned rank F. Name became incensed, confronting the woman at the desk, and stating that she needed to adjust her demeanor, lest someone else do in for her. Dengan the direct face that run, arguing that like as immense strength warranted an S-rank designation at minimum, the receptionist nevertheless remained unfazed, curtly telling them to remove her smelly human self and accept the rank they were given. Before them could return, like intervened, halting her, and offering an apology to the receptionist, they then graciously accepted the rank, and they departed. Once outside, Nam began to apologize profusely to Light for her outburst, but Light calmly instructed her to compose herself. Christian led his party to Colonel as into. Colonel was pleased to see them again and inquired how he might assist them. Light explained they had an unconventional request to raise the entire upper level of the inn for a full month, during which time no one else, besides himself and his party, would be permitted access. Not even the INS own staff. He offered a preemptive apology for an potential inconvenience this might cause, emphasizing its critical importance. He then produced a box brimming with gold coins and presented it as payment. Colonel, however, declined, asserting that he should never accept money from those who had saved his life. Legate, nonetheless, persisted, and Colonel eventually relented, accepting the payment. Once they were on the upper floor, Light deployed various magical wardu to ensure their privacy and protection from intrusive guests. He then removed his mask and cloak, settling down to relax. Nam then reiterated to Light that he should have remained by him. He assigned Nam and Gold the task of gathering all the intelligence he required, acknowledging Light as considerable strength, but emphasizing the necessity of thorough precaution. No amount of caution is excessive. This statement greatly agitated Light, prompting him to rise from his seat. He demanded to know if Nam intended to thwart his vengeance, preventing him from delivering justice to those responsible for his village's destruction and family. The familiar, thriving aura of death and devastation enveloped him once more, thriving Nam. She instantly prostrated herself, begging for pardon, and insisting she had no intention of causing offense. Light eventually regains his composure and apologized to Nam, realizing her sole desire was for his well-being. The following morning, they prepared to finally enter the dungeon, donning their gear for the day and joining Alang Tiku. Stretched towards the dungeon as main entrance, as they waited, three cloaked individuals abruptly stood in front of a party of young human explorers. The sheer audacity with which they bypassed the queue immediately signaled to Light that these adventurers were not human, while all other human groups appeared intimidated. Light interjected, instructing the hooded figures to return to their proper place in the queue, like everyone else. One of the cloaked men spun around, a mix of fury and disbelief on his face, utterly taken aback by the fact a mere human had the audacity to address him. Light calmly advised him that if we hailed from a noble lineage, he likely wouldn't wish to cause a public disturbance. However, the hooded individual appeared to possess significant temper issues as he began to ready his weapon. Yet another member of his group intervened, stopping him, and he promptly withdrew from the line. As they retreated, the cloaked man warned Light that their encounter was far from over. All the humans present erupted in cheers for Light, admitting they would never have possessed the courage to challenge individuals from other races. Concurrently, the young adventurers ahead of Light inquired why he had brought and provisions. They explained that this particular dungeon was exceptionally vast and could take multiple days to traverse, which is why explorers consistently carried their own provisions, enabling them to set up some overnight. Shortly thereafter, they stepped into the dungeons, discovering themselves in an entirely novel realm, teeming with its unique array of beings and beasts. As soon as light ascertained that no one was observing them, he activated his concealment spell, followed by flight magic, allowing them to traverse the dungeons airborne and undetected. Concurrently, deep within the jungle, the cloaked individual had his garment, still searching over the disrespect shown by that insignificant human. He unsheathed a massive sword from his back, proclaiming loudly that his name was Kaido, the youngest elf to ever be inducted into the esteemed White Knights, until the blood of the master flowed through his veins. In a fit of fury, he annihilated all the orcs, impaling their heads as the dark elf named Young urged him to compose himself. Kaido, however, remained enraged, frustrated by his inability to advance his level, which appeared to be capped at 15. Yun informed him that typical elves usually reach a maximum level of 700, but Kaido found this explanation unsatisfactory, and then vowed to himself that he would exceed this level, regardless of the obstacles. Meanwhile, back on the third floor, Leigi and his companions had already successfully cleared this section, as well, and opted to conclude their exploration for the day, collecting all the magical gems as evidence of their accomplishment. With all items secured, they resolved to ascend back to the surface, admiring the inherent beauty of this subterranean realm. They understood that without their flight capability, transitioning between floors would have consumed a significant amount of time. However, thanks to their unique ability, they could conquer several levels in a single day. On their return journey, they observed the young adventurers engaged in combat with a group of goblins. Light chose to observe as the youngsters successfully eliminated all the creatures through effective teamwork. However, Light swiftly descended and dispatched a bushnak that was stealthily approaching the mage deer at the rear of the grove. Light instructed the young adventurers not to become overly fixated on the immediate view before them, and to consistently maintain awareness of their environment. The young individuals expressed their gratitude for his assistance, just as a pack of wolves abruptly emerged from the forest. The adventurers became frightened and wished to flee, but to their bewilderment, the wolves did not attack. Instead, they merely fled. All their inquiries were resolved, however, when a colossal mantis burst forth from the woods, prepared to obliterate anything in its path. And only Light now stands as a barrier between the monstrous creature and the lives of these fledgling adventurers. But this marks the conclusion of the video. Don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Thank you for tuning in, and I'll catch you in the next one.